It's Monday, October 29th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, it's all about the water. We dive into understanding coastal resiliency and climate change, and then learn more about innovative and alternative septic systems. Let's start with some news you can use. It's the day all Barnstable diggers and rakers look forward to. Oyster season is upon us. Starting Saturday, November 3rd, the Scudder Lane Recreational Shellfishing Area in Barnstable will be open for the recreational harvest of oysters, except for a portion of the area defined and marked by yellow buoys, which will remain closed for shellfish propagation projects and/or scientific research project protection. You can harvest up to a half a peck per calendar week of legal-sized oysters, 3 inches on the longest length. Don't forget the lemon and cocktail sauce. How do you build resilient coastal communities facing the rising concerns of climate change? Elizabeth Jenkins, Director of Planning and Development, takes a deep dive into mitigation, municipal vulnerability, and the tools and resources available to the town to plan for an uncertain future. It's all about the water, or is it about coastal resiliency? It can be both. With me today, Director of Planning and Development, Elizabeth Jenkins. There's so much talk about coastal resiliency and what are we going to do with climate and change and our coastline. And you said we have 100 plus miles of coastline.
170 miles of coastline just here in Barnstable alone.
Just here in Barnstable. So there's a lot to talk about with coastal resiliency. We're going to break it down into 3 things today. So first up is hazard mitigation plans. Talk to us about those.
Sure. So this is kind of a statewide planning framework that encourages municipalities to look at the natural hazards that impact your community, and really a full range of things, not just coastal resiliency issues, and certainly those are primary here in Barnstable, but flooding, storm surge, even things like drought and wildfire we take a look at. And it asks us to really evaluate where our risks and vulnerabilities are related to these natural hazards. And, of course, we spend a lot of time in terms of preparedness, response, what to do if one of these events happen. But what can we do from a planning perspective? Again, knowing that there is risk here in a coastal community, that we are going to experience these events. What kind of investments can we make as a community to help buffer ourselves from the impacts of these hazards? What can we do to plan ahead for them so when they do happen, we bounce back a little bit easier and we're protecting ourselves ahead of time? So this is our hazard mitigation plan. It's a plan that we update on a regular basis every 5 years. It's time to update ours again. So we've been going through the process again to kind of reevaluate our risks and hazards and develop an action plan across the town to think about how can we begin to mitigate these risks. And if we do this and we have this plan in place, then the state rewards that by making grant funding opportunities available to implement the actions that we've identified in the plan.
So some of these actions, and again, when we talk about mitigation, it's not adaptation, it's mitigation. This is like trying to stop what's already going to come down anyways.
Right.
So, this could be any kind of storm in the winter, it could be a hurricane, it could be any number of things. So when you start to look at some of those plans, what are some of the areas that you're concerned with from an economic development and a coastal resiliency, north side, south side?
Sure, in terms of geography in town. So again, we've been doing obviously climate preparedness planning, whether it's formally or informally, right, here for a long time. So when you go and you talk to our residents, you talk to our emergency officials, and you see, obviously we have the most vulnerability along our coastlines. On the North Shore, it's really kind of in the Commerce Road area. I know we've had a lot of conversations about that as a community. A lot of the north side is sheltered by Sandy Neck, which is a barrier beach, but that area is, it doesn't get that protection from that Sandy Neck barrier beach. So it becomes very vulnerable in terms of flooding that comes both from the inland marshes as well as from the ocean. And then the south side, another barrier beach, we have the Long Beach barrier beach, which is in that case a developed barrier beach. We're very fortunate that Sandy Neck on the north side is a preserved and undeveloped barrier beach, so functions in a very natural way. But on the south side, the Long Beach barrier beach is a developed barrier beach, has a lot of real estate developed there. So we see a lot of vulnerability there, and really up through that whole Centerville River system, a lot of flood zone and vulnerable properties there, especially those kind of small historic homes that, may not have been invested in and developed up out of the floodplain. So there, and then, we do see kind of areas, more urban in character, especially around the kind of Hyannisport into the Hyannis Inner Harbor area, where, again, we just see a lot more density of people in development that are very vulnerable in terms of storm surge and hurricanes as well.
So you get this plan done, and the state's going to give out grants to do specific things, but it's the municipal vulnerability preparedness.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's give everything a really long name,
Yeah.
but we'll just call it MVP, right?
Right.
So what is that about? What are these granting opportunities?
Yeah, so MVP is kind of similar. It was part of Governor Baker's $300 million commitment to addressing climate change and coastal resiliency issues here in Massachusetts. So this was a grant opportunity that the Baker-Polito administration made available to cities and towns across the Commonwealth. We were one of, I think, 82 cities awarded in the second round of grants, and we were allowed entry to participation in this program, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness MVP program. And what this does is it's similar to the hazard mitigation planning framework that the state asks us to do, but it takes it a step forward a little bit and asks us not just to look at the hazards that we've faced historically as a community, but ones that we expect to face in light of things like rising sea levels and climate change. So in working with some of the kind of state-sponsored research that's gone on around that, integrating that into our preparedness and response planning here in town, and thinking about our infrastructure impacts, but also our environmental impacts and our social impacts of climate change going forward. So what this process is essentially it will engage interested parties. If anybody's interested, please contact us in a comprehensive one-day workshop that looks to evaluate this. Again, really understanding what our risks and vulnerabilities are, and looking at it through these different and multiple lenses, and then beginning to develop and prioritize actions and responses to that. And much like the hazard mitigation plan, by doing this and completing this process allows us access to a second round of action grants to implement the actions identified in the plan.
Right. So Massachusetts and Governor Baker's administration has really literally taken this climate change and coastal resiliency opportunities and challenges to heart, has funded a lot of different things, has also funded a pilot program for the town of Barnstable.
Yeah, and that comes from a little bit of a different place. That's actually federal funding.
Okay.
It comes from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and that was actually a grant that was given to our regional planning agency, the Cape Cod Commission, to look at, again, we're a coastal community, understanding what our impacts are, and this project, I think, and the name's going to escape me because they're all so similar.
Right.
The Resilient Cape Cod, the Resilient Cape Cod, a regional project, again, the Resilient Cape Cod project looks at what are the coastal impacts from flooding, storm surge, and coastal erosion, so kind of the three major impacts that we see on the coast, and what are potential responses to that we're going to have as a region, and also looking at that on a neighborhood scale. And what are the impacts of those decisions from an environmental perspective, from an economic perspective, on our property values and tax base? And it allows us to think about our responses, again, our responses being a wide range of things in terms of building infrastructure or changing the way we develop, putting new regulations in place, things like that. And what are the kind of follow-on impacts of that from those different perspectives? So this is a project that the Commission's been working on. They've been kind of in the early phases of that, developing out this matrix of different responses with scientists and other sort of experts across the Cape. and putting it together into what they call a decision support tool that'll help take all this kind of information and economic analysis. They've engaged an environmental economist actually to look at again the impacts of applying these different solutions, climate solutions, and they've developed this into a tool. And Barnstable is going to be our pilot community where we go out and test this tool and see what kind of values that certainly making these different decisions will have on our community.
So it's kind of one of those things where, chicken and egg, right? So you want to try something, but you don't want to implement it unless you know that it's going to work.
Right.
But coastal resiliency is one of those things where you don't have a lot of time. It seems like every year there's more doom and gloom, there's more sea level rise. From an economic development standpoint, how do you balance that with growth?
Yeah.
And especially on our coastlines. Like I said, there's a lot of coastline. Some of it's preserved already, like the Sandy Neck area, but there's decisions that have to come through the town to kind of look at this as a whole now and say, what are we going to do?
Absolutely, and so if I'm an individual homeowner, certainly, we have a lot of investment on our coastlines. People love living near the water. It's beautiful. It's why they're here on Cape Cod. We have a lot of high-value real estate on our coastlines, and these properties are kind of on the front lines having to make these decisions of what do I do with this major investment that I have, and how do I respond to the fact that Cape Cod is a place that's changing, that's not staying the same, on a very basic level, and that's what this decision support tool is really there to help people understand is as a community and both as individuals that we really need to be cognizant of the different options that are out there, the full scale of options, and thinking about how it affects us economically. If we choose to armor a coastline, that's going to have impacts on a recreational beach. That's a mile down the road. You're not letting those natural processes happen. If that sand isn't getting through, then how does that impact us as a community that values recreation and where recreation and tourism is a big part of what we do. So
and what do seawalls look like?
Right, versus restoring wetlands.
Right.
So that full kind of scale of different options that are out there, and really on a big level, trying to understand the impacts of that decision making. So they're big choices, and I think the idea here is to start to educate people about what the responses are, and again, start to think about these cost value trade-offs of these big decisions that we're going to have to make as a coastal community.
Right, sooner rather than later. So let's talk timeline.
Yeah. So with the MVP process, again, that's a community engagement process. We are working with the Commission and Barnstable County Cooperative Extension to do that. They're great partners with climate change planning and coastal resiliency planning with us already. Our goal is to hold that session before the end of the year, so probably sometime early December. And then to hold some follow-up sessions on the Resilient Cape Cod support tool at the beginning of next year. So if people want to get involved, we'll post all this information up on our Planning and Development Department website. We have a coastal resiliency and climate change page that we're developing. So if people are interested, developing a clearinghouse there for people to learn more.
Excellent information today. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you, Paula.
Innovative and alternative septic systems sometimes are needed when traditional Title V septic is not a good fit for a property. Emily Michelle Olmsted, Project Assistant for the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environmental, manages the tracking of maintenance and data for these systems for all 15 Cape Cod towns. She joined us in studio to talk more about the program and why it's necessary. It's all about the water and the innovation and the alternatives. With me today, Emily Michelle Olmsted from the Barnstable County. She is a project assistant manager, all sorts of different titles there for you for the environmental division of Barnstable County. You're going to tell us about innovative and alternative septic systems and how they're tracked here in Barnstable County. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
So let's start first with, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I work with Barnstable County. Part of the time I'm at the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Test Center where we test out new IA systems. But I also run the Barnstable County Innovative Alternative Tracking Program. And so that tracks the innovative alternative septic systems for all 15 towns in the Cape, as well as most of the vineyard towns, Nantucket and Wareham currently.
Okay, innovative alternative systems, what are they?
Yeah, so an innovative alternative septic system is basically any system by definition that has more or fewer components than a Title V system.
Okay.
And so really what that boils down to is that you have some extra parts usually that are encouraging bacterial growth to provide more advanced treatment for your wastewater. And it's on site at your home.
Okay, so why would I get one of those rather than just a regular Title V system?
So it's going to depend a lot on your situation. Sometimes a Board of Health will require it for maybe you're in a more environmentally sensitive area, maybe you have a smaller lot size, maybe you want to put on an extra bedroom but you don't have the leach field capacity to be able to handle that much extra flow. It does depend, but usually the main idea behind it is that you need a higher level of treatment than what a standard Title V system will give you.
That's interesting. So, you know, it's all about the water, right? We're talking about it. We're trying to solve some wastewater issues with nitrogen out there. And we just want to make sure that people understand that your septic system really literally is the nitrogen in our water is coming from these systems.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of nitrogen that comes from wastewater. I mean, certainly from other things as well, but in quite a few systems, the technology is literally designed to remove a lot of that nitrogen, as well as some other some nutrients as well. But
okay, so let's talk a little bit about, so I might need one of these systems because I'm in an environmentally sensitive area, and I want to get one of these systems installed. Are there specialty people that do that?
Yeah, and so a big part of what my office does is we track the operation and maintenance contract. It's required by the state. If you have an innovative alternative septic system, you are required at all times to have an operation and maintenance contract in place, which is basically an agreement saying that you have someone who's qualified, that is someone who holds a wastewater operator's license in the state and has training in your specific technology to be taking care of your system. Often that includes taking samples, so that way you know the performance of the system, but also just making sure the components are functioning as designed and that it really is still providing that higher level of treatment.
Right, and we want to make sure that, I mean, this is a higher level of bacteria as well, so this is kind of important to our boards of health in our towns?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big reason why this came about. So Barnstable County, the goal is to provide help to the towns on the Cape. And so there was this need because boards of health and health departments deal with so many different public health issues that this is such a specialized thing. So we kind of stepped in to track just specifically the contract part of it, as well as there's the operators report the samples online to our database, so that way once the data has been input manually electronically, you can pull it up, you can do things with it, you can graph it, and really get a better idea of the performance as opposed to the files sitting in a file drawer somewhere.
Right, that's where data goes to die, by the way, is just file drawers, right?
Doesn't it though?
So let's talk data a little bit. So do you have some numbers for Barnstable County and what data has been collected thus far?
Yeah, so a lot of the systems, the towns and or the state require sampling on components such as biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, there's nitrogen data, some even total phosphorus, sometimes on fecal coliform, which is an indication of the bacteria. And all of that is on our website, so that way you can pull it up by town, you can look at it by technology. But we have more than 2,700 active permits in our system right now. And again, quite a few different towns, all 15 on the Cape, Nantucket, Wareham, and then 5 on the Vineyard.
Right, so I find this fascinating. You know, we share watersheds, so are we sharing data on these systems as well between towns?
So yeah, in my experience, so anyone can look at the data that we have available, as well as, in my experience, a lot of the towns have come to me if they have a question to see how another town has dealt with it. Or, you know, again, they can look at somebody else's data if say, they want to look at how a certain technology is performing in another town. Maybe they want to put this technology in their town. That data is for them. And really, the possibilities are endless.
Right. So when we talk about data as well, and these systems, there's different types of systems that go in. So people can make, towns can make that recommendation of what they allow for the innovation in alternative systems. Is that how it goes? Is that they'll have their own regulations of what systems that they are supporting?
Yeah, so and different systems have different approval level in the state as well, which you certainly can find off the Mass DEP website. And so, but a lot of them have similar approvals, so it may be that you just take a look at another town's data to see how on Cape Cod specifically, how that type of technology is performing. The data is there.
Wow, that's that's really, really interesting. So with these systems, is there data that you're collecting now that talks about nitrogen and how it's maybe helping some of those sensitive areas?
Yeah, so you can look at the performance, and there's a whole bit about how to read the data, but it's actually one of the main components that we track on our website is nitrogen removal. Right. And that's quite a complex issue, but again, the data is there on our website if you want to play around and see what's happening in your town.
Right. So these are a little bit different. These require an operator compared to just putting in a Title V and then having it inspected or pumped every couple of years. These require an operator, which you said has to have a wastewater operators. Is there a choice of operators here in the area?
Yeah, there absolutely is, and a lot of people don't know that. And so if you aren't happy with your operator, for whatever reason you want to switch, we do have up on our website a list of all the wastewater operators we know of who do business in the area. And then even beyond that, if you contact one of us, in our program, we're happy to specifically say who has training and which technology too, so that way you can hopefully have a choice in who you do business
Oh, I
with.
didn't realize they have different training in their technologies as well.
So yes, so you need both a wastewater operator's license and training the technology per the state, technically.
Excellent. What else do you want people to know about this? I find it fascinating. I'm a data geek anyways, but this is just going to help the Cape, kind of tackle this wastewater problem that we continuously talk about.
Absolutely. So you can absolutely find out more on our website, which is www.septic.barnstablecountyhealth.org. You can email myself or another person in my office, Brian Baumgartel. And basically, Barnstable County also has information on the Alternative Septic System Test Center to find out more.
That is fantastic. That was great information, Emily and Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The spooky community calendar continues. On October 31st from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., sponsored by the Hyannis Business Improvement District, businesses all along Main Street will be participating in their yearly safe trick-or-treat treating event which they will open up their doors to any trick or treaters willing to step inside for some candy. Here is a look at upcoming boards, commissions, and committee meetings. Comments, suggestions, accolades? Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Email us or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works. For you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.